friends. Welcome to Yoga on Location with Ruby. I'm Ruby. I am coming to you from my home in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I am going to talk about some yoga props and some modifications that you can use if you're new, especially to yoga practice. When I first began yoga about 5.5 years ago, I thought yoga props were for people who had been practicing yoga for a while and needed extra things to help them with their poses. And I couldn't have been more wrong. Yoga props are used at all levels of yoga, and they're really, really especially helpful to beginners. So some of the things that we're going to go over today quickly are blankets, bolsters, blocks, and straps. And I'm going to talk about each one a little bit, some ways to use it, some alternatives if you do not have that prop, and then a few modifications for some common poses as well that might be helpful to you as a beginner especially. So let's jump right in and talk about blankets. You don't have to use a certain kind of blanket. There isn't really a yoga blanket, even though you often see this style. That's because it's woven, and woven makes it more grippy and less slippy, for better terminology. And blankets can be used from everything from covering yourself up with the Shavasana, corpse pose that you see at the end of most yoga practices. Every yoga practice almost it's supposed to end with corpse pose, where you just let all of your yoga practice for that day sink into your body. Other ways to use blankets. We use them to bring the ground up to us. Sometimes you can fold it and put it under your hips if you're in easy seat, and that brings again the ground up, so your hips are a little higher and your knees are able to drop down. Sometimes when you're new to yoga, or maybe just the way your body is, even if you've been doing yoga for a long time, if you try to come into easy seat, your knees might be up here. Sitting up on a blanket can be a really good way to help your knees come closer to the mat. Often, though, we use blankets for padding. Some common things that need padding are the knees, the shoulders. Think about your bony joints. And tabletop is a position where you often spend time in almost every yoga sequence. You might spend a little bit of time in tabletop position or a variation of this. So in table, you just fold it up, place it under your knees. Some other knee poses. Camel often is a good pose for padding your knees. I'm not going to do a full camel right now, but a little dancing camel for you. Options for padding our knees. If we don't have a blanket, a towel works. You can even fold up your yoga mat, use it to pad. Yoga mats actually come in different thicknesses. I have it's probably a 1-inch thick pad. It's great for my knees. It makes balancing poses harder or more challenging, I guess I could say. Another good use for your blanket and table is for your wrists. If you're new, especially to yoga, you may be lacking some of the strength and flexibility that your wrists need to do a lot of the yoga poses. We do spend a lot of time on our palms, and taking a blanket and placing it under the bottom half of your palm, like so, works to change that 90-degree angle so that your pressure is less in your wrist. It's a good support for your palm, and you just place it about from the thumb joint down, and that can help alleviate wrist pain. Another way to modify poses where you're going to be on your wrist is to make your hands into fists. But I want to talk for a moment about proper hand form whenever you are doing things where you're putting weight on your wrists. One of the things that you should be doing is spreading your palms wide. That's often cued. Another thing you should be doing is pressing down through all of your fingerprints and lifting up through your shoulder blades and lifting away from the mat. I just want to contrast that with our palms flat, dumping into our wrists, and then not pressing away and not kind of doming through the upper back. See how I'm collapsed in here? What we want to do is push away from the mat, press in through all fingerprints, and wherever you are, if you want to try this with me for a moment, you can see the difference. First, start out with your palms flat, and then press down through your fingerprints like you're trying to grip the mat or the floor, wherever you are. As you do this, notice how your palm lifts up off the mat a little bit. This is called Hasta Bandha in yoga, or hand lock. And this is actually the proper form for your hands in things like tabletop, downward dog, eventually crow pose, or maybe you're already there, but some of those arm balancing poses, handstand, etc. That Hasta Bandha, that hand lock, really pressing down into all of your fingerprints is going to make such a difference in your practice and especially your wrists. If you don't have a blanket, you can use towel. You can use any blanket you have. Again, just you want it to be more grippy and less slicky. Let's take a look at a bolster. A bolster, really just a long pillow, right? We use it again to bring the ground up to us. And some common times it might feel better in your body to be bringing the ground up to you. And some of your recline poses are child's pose, extended child's pose. Maybe your body shape or your flexibility don't allow you to come all the way to the mat in child's pose, and just placing this bolster under your body will help support your body and make the pose more comfortable to you. If you use a bolster in child's pose, make sure to turn your head the opposite direction for the same amount of time to get the stretch in the neck on both sides. Another reclined pose that a bolster is good for would be a reclined hero's pose. So again, bringing the ground up to you and helping support your body. You can sit up on it in easy seat. You can use it in reclined twist, again, to bring the ground up to you. So for example, you're doing a twist and your shoulder is on the ground, maybe your knee only comes this far. So if you put a bolster where your knee would be, then your knee can rest on the bolster and that can feel a little more comfortable. You can use it in plow to bring the ground up to your toes. I'll demonstrate that pose right now. But you can use it under your knees in Shavasana. You can use it under your back in bridge. You can use it to help you with some other back bending, have some support. A lot of uses for bolster, and if you don't have a bolster, a pillow, especially a longer pillow, works well for those things. Let's take a look at our blocks now. We use blocks to raise the ground up. You can sit on one in easy seat. You can use them in child's pose, maybe one between your feet and maybe another one under your forehead. This is also a great way to modify child's pose if you're needing more space between you and the ground. Blocks are often used to bring the ground up to us in folding postures. There are 3 widths of blocks. There's this width, and this width. And then often we use 2 for certain things that we're doing just for more stability. So you can see how that really, depending on where you're at or where you're at today, how blocks can help you get into poses that might be uncomfortable without them because you can't quite reach the floor. If you don't have blocks, some alternatives, books, even a water bottle. You can use a water bottle in the standing posture to bring the ground up to you. And then finally, we're going to talk about straps. Straps are good for helping your hands meet each other or your hands meet your feet. And there are lots of different kinds of straps. This one I have that I really like has different loops in it. And I find that useful. I feel like I get a better grip than if I just had one long strap with no loops. But it's just whatever works for you. You can also use a belt, any kind of belt, a belt, or bathrobe tie. And if we want to bring our foot to our hand, say for example in big toe, like you can't grab your big toe, a long strap, you can use it like this, or you can, I like this way, and then you can work on getting different distances. You can kind of know, well, maybe I was here, and then I was here, and then finally I'm here, and then one day I'm able to grab my big toe. You can use it to get your hands to your hands. For example, in cow-faced hands, if you're not familiar with this, it's a bind behind our back, and we but we get our fingertips locked like this. Maybe you don't have that mobility yet, and to work on it, use a strap. And then we're getting into the same kind of shape, still opening the chest and the shoulders, but the strap allows us to get into that shape. In some seated postures, a good way to use your strap is to, if you can't reach your feet in seated forward folds, then you can use your strap to give you some resistance to work on increasing your flexibility. One of the things that's really important in forward folds, whether standing or sitting, is that you're hinging from your hips and not over rounding your spine. We have a tendency to want to cram ourselves into poses in yoga, and rounding through your spine and bending through there to try to get your nose to your knees, for example, is really bad for your low back. It can even cause your disc to slip. We always want to bend from our hips, keeping our back flat and long. And then once you are as far as you comfortably can come, then you can relax your head down. A bolster is also great for if you need, I'm short, so it's kind of long for me. If you need, like if you're working to get down to your nose, to your knee, then this bolster, maybe you can't rest on your knee, your legs yet, on your thighs. You can't get your stomach to your thighs yet, but you can get them to this bolster. And then in reclined poses as well, you can use the straps a strap to support you can't reach your toes. There's another good use for a strap to help with maybe your core is a little weak, and one of the poses where we use a lot of core strength is boat pose. Maybe this is a hard pose for you and your back wants to round because the core needs some strength, and this strap, this extra support, can help you keep your back in line, or then even boat with straight legs, and help us keep our back in that straight position. And that is your introduction to some of the common yoga props that you see and their uses. Thank you for exploring these things with me and learning more about them. And I wish you all the best of luck in your yoga journey. I hope that you will join me often on your location, whenever and wherever you are in the world, to practice YOLO with beautiful day. Namaste.